the Recovery Daily podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. And today I am excited to say that I have my very first interview ever. Welcome, Ralph.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I'm glad you're here. So the listeners know that I was interviewed on your radio show, and I didn't talk too much about who you are or your experience and stuff because I thought we were planning on doing this interview. So I'm really excited about it. Um, I think I want to just get started and see if you can share a little bit about your stroke and addiction recovery, and how those experiences have led you to where you are today.
Well, my stroke was, and thank you for having me. I'm very excited for this. My stroke was in October of 2015. Yeah, I'm 9 years post-stroke. So 2015.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know I was having a stroke. I took some ibuprofen and went to bed. Figured I'd worked
Oh,
too
no.
hard that week.
Yeah.
Woke up the next morning, it was worse. Had a hard time seeing and everything else. Uh, and I've, like I said, I'm 9 years post-stroke now. After 7 years, my recovery became remarkable. Um, People told me this is as good as it's going to get in the medical profession, which I want. Now I'm at the point anybody says that, I want to punch them.
Yeah. Yeah.
As far as the addiction or part of my involvement with 12-step programs, that was years ago through addiction to drugs. It was an unfortunate um, time in my life, but I've gotten through that. And I think the experience of the familiarity with the 12 steps has meant a great deal in my stroke recovery as well. You know, the one day at a time is a big deal for both stroke recovery and addiction. And the one day at a time is really big in the stroke because of, you got to recognize the little victories every day. And your stroke, you know, yesterday you could do 3 steps, today you can do 5. That's a victory. That
Yeah.
one day victory is important because
Mhm.
those build up. As you and I have talked about before, it took 7 years for me to even 6.5 to even find out I needed an ankle foot orthotic. Once I got that, 6 months later, I was off it. I was off my cane and everything.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing. And, there's a bunch of stuff in the steps about um, recognizing a higher power, which I've always had a spiritual base,
Okay.
and that has become very important in my recovery. You know, there's also sharing with others. I mean, that's become very important to me because we weren't told a lot. We didn't know what we didn't know, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I don't want other stroke survivors to go through that. I went through anger, depression, frustration, all kinds of feelings because I lost myself. I'm
Yeah.
a different person completely. I sold off my construction business, which was like selling part of me. You know,
Yeah.
it changed my life. So, I mean, it's amazing. I always say it's been the most difficult thing I've done in my life, the recovery, but it's become the most rewarding thing in my life.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get to that point. I feel like from my experience in sobriety that I'm gonna get there. Like just having that experience where I can go from the lowest time in my entire life to being so grateful to wake up in the morning. Like, I feel like I'm going to go through that transformation again in stroke recovery. But right now, I'm not there yet. I'm really not. If I'm being completely honest, like, I have a lot of hard days and But I know like with the work, like keep showing up and it will happen, right? I mean, all of those sayings from sobriety are so suitable to the struggles, the mental health struggles that I face in stroke recovery. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. Did you like, I very much correlate step one with where I was at when I had to walk away from my career, where like my life became unmanageable and I had to make a decision to leave my career because I was in so much pain. And that's just a correlation for me. Do you feel that there is a step one type um, idea that happened in the beginning of your stroke recovery, or was it a little different for you?
I don't know. For me, it was a gradual step one. I mean,
Okay.
the management of my life was difficult because my physicality changed, my psychological changed, and there were steps to improving those things.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, a lot of the early days, there was a lot of anger because they didn't tell me very much.
Mm.
They didn't tell me it was going to be the most difficult thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Um, so I think I agree with that about the management of my life was difficult, but the anger led me to um, take steps myself to self advocate and make my recovery better. Um,
Yeah.
you know, I was a fighter, and I guess that's um, the gradual management of my life that I finally got into. And self-advocating. I also educated myself. I learned more about neurophysical therapists, which is completely different from a physical therapist in
Yeah.
most cases.
Yeah.
And that changed my life. I can run on a water treadmill because I found a neurophysical therapist.
Yeah.
Those kind of things are gradual management that lead to, and again, from the recovery, from addiction recovery or 12 steps, that lead to a clarity. And again, those clarities for me were not aha. They were, okay, tomorrow's
Yeah. Yeah.
it was very gradual where that
Yeah. I
clarity
get
came.
that. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah,
comes to
exactly.
mind for me. It's funny, like I can grab those freaking sayings in stroke recovery, but so that leads me to like this idea about being your biggest advocate. I had to do the same thing. I found that my doctors just, I don't know if they didn't care or they didn't know what they were doing, but it's like neurologist after neurologist. Um, I was in my third neurologist office and I hadn't really gotten to any solution. Like we had tried a few drugs, they didn't work. And then we got to the point where she was like, okay, well, how about you come back in 3 months? And I was like, what? I
Yeah.
mean, what are you talking about? Like, I'm not done. We're not just rolling over here. Um, so I definitely faced this really long part of recovery where I was chasing a solution and it was like I was the only one. And with my deficits, like my deficits are with my vision, language, memory. It was difficult for me to do my research and stuff. So, what were the biggest challenges that you faced with your doctors and them like as if they didn't know what they were talking about or they didn't care? Like not to throw doctors under the,
Yeah.
bus, but there's a lot of frustration.
Yeah, there was. I mean, And the problem is, well, 9 years ago, we know a lot more about stroke now, and I think the medical profession is getting much better at it. So is the therapy professions.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, 9 years ago, I don't feel like they knew as much as they do now. I don't think they knew as much about the. Nobody warned me about the mental health issues. Nobody warned me about the
Yeah.
depression and the anger and those kind of things. Nobody told me that, yeah, you're going to go through some physical disability type things that are going to cause you to get angry and upset and frustrated, and you're going to wind up sleeping, getting headaches. Stress is going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, back then they weren't. There wasn't as much coordination. I feel like between the teams. I think the moment that made a difference for me was when I realized I could fire my physical therapist or I could fire my doctor.
Yeah,
I'm the
that's
captain.
right.
I'm the captain of my own team. Once that, once I came to that realization, everything changed. I found better therapies. I found better doctors.
Mm.
I found better durable medical equipment for a walker, cane, whatever. Those, and there's, I found this HydroWorks water treadmill that you're in it's like a walk-in shower.
Oh, yeah.
And now I can do an 18-minute mile in a water treadmill.
Oh,
You know,
that's cool. Do you go
yeah,
to a
I never
gym for
thought I'd
that?
be a, pardon me?
Do you go to a gym for that? Like, where do
No,
you
I
do
go to
that?
my neurophysical therapist
Oh,
company, Spark
neurophysical
Rehab. Yeah,
therapist. I'll have to look that
yeah.
up.
David and Shannon that have Spark Rehab have done an incredible change in my life. I
Oh,
mean, it was
wow. That's
amazing.
awesome.
And I think that's where, when I finally became captain, it's like, okay, if I'm going to be captain, I got to look up physical attributes of stroke. I got to look up mental attributes of stroke. I didn't understand or even talk to anybody about speech language therapy until seven and a half years ago, or
Wow.
7.5 years. So I mean, because I had swallowing issues,
Okay.
you know, and nobody ever referred me to that. So now I know because I became my own captain, the members of my team, there's 9 of them. I mean, acupuncture, chiropractor, massage, physical therapist, occupational therapist, changed my stroke brain fog, you
Yeah.
know, that I could better organize myself. I didn't know occupational therapists did that, you
Yeah.
know. So, I mean, becoming the captain of your own team is a big deal.
Yeah, my husband is who helped me realize that. He was like, when they tell you, okay, come back in a week, come back in 3 months, come back, you don't have to come back. You can make a decision for yourself that this isn't working for me and I need to find somewhere else to go. And when he told me that same, I all of a sudden felt a freedom. I felt like my recovery was in my own hands finally, and that I wasn't just like, I don't know, just like I felt like I was a chess piece. That's what
Yeah.
I felt like, and they were just moving me around. But so switching gears a little bit, I do want to get a little bit more into the emotional challenges, but
Okay.
I wanted to talk to you about your Stroke Warrior radio. Um,
Okay.
yeah, because I get it, I think, but I want you to share a little bit about what maybe resources that you lacked in early stroke recovery and how that led you to create your Stroke Warrior Radio and how you have turned your recovery into advocacy through this broadcasting.
Well, I guess again, I go back to we didn't know what we didn't know. Once I found people that knew about stroke, uh, therapists, doctors, etc., and also other stroke survivors. Once I found stroke survivors, I realized that um, it's a choice to become a survivor or a stroke warrior. So when I did that, I also found somebody that said your voice put me to sleep. I think you should be on the radio. So yeah. So we kind of thought we didn't know what we didn't know, and we wish we would have known. So we don't get so damn angry. So I'm trying to, again, it's one of the steps. I'm trying to give away. I can't keep it unless I give it away.
That's right.
So if I give it away and help some stroke survivor not go through what I did, not sit in front of the Jack Daniels and my pain pills twice, if I can help somebody get there,
Yeah.
and I've my strokes become something effective in somebody's life, including mine.
Yeah.
So I mean, and it was a motivation out of frustration, anger for what they didn't tell me. But I'm hoping to get enough people on Stroke Warrior Radio to share their Stroke Warriors stories. I'm hoping to get enough therapists to share their stroke resources and therapies. We're sharing resource shows. We share doctor shows. I mean, we're even getting into coaching shows. So there's a whole bunch of different things that I wish I would have had. What a difference it would have made in my recovery if I knew about an ankle foot orthotic within the first 6 months.
Yeah.
I didn't find that till 6.5 years. So, I mean, I want to educate and motivate people. Once I found other survivors and warriors, I became motivated.
Yeah.
So that's why we do what we do. We want to motivate others to not have to suffer like we did.
Right. I mean, I felt I keep skipping over to the emotional stuff, but I really, like you, felt like when I left my career, I was giving up my purpose in life. Like when I stood in my kitchen and I'm like going through all my paperwork that I had to shred, turned to my husband. I was like, I feel like I am just everything I worked for, I'm just throwing away in the trash. And he said, you're looking at it all wrong. Everything that you worked for is around you. And that helped. Like he's been an incredible inspiration for me when I start feeling down and discouraged. But the podcast and writing and sharing my experience, strength, and hope has given me purpose again. Um, what other things? Like I've been very involved in like learning new hobbies and creative things like sewing and painting and making jewelry and woodworking and all of these things to try to learn a little bit more about what I'm capable of, what I can do versus what I can't do. Is there anything new that you have been able to get into or learn about yourself since you had your stroke?
Uh, Getting back to the emotional, I've learned patience. That was something that I didn't have very much of before. I agree with you. I thought I lost a part of myself when I got rid of my contracting business. But, the learning more about myself, I did more reading, I did journaling. I've done painting as well. I used to do a lot of woodworking. I love refurbishing old wood things.
Yeah, same. That's
Yeah.
what I love.
Oh my God, I love that. My wife and I, when we lived in North Dakota, they had a dump, those dump season.
Yeah.
Dump days. They put furniture and stuff out in the curb, and the city comes and picks it up. We'd
Yeah.
go out at night and pick up furniture and
That's great.
bring it to my shop and refurbish it and resell it.
That's
And
fun.
so, I mean, it's something I always liked doing. Um, I need to get back to it, but because of the radio and my full-time job, um, I don't have as much time, but I still do the little painting. I still do a little reading, and cooking has become extremely big for me. It always,
Same.
it always was,
Oh,
but
okay.
you know, um, I grew up cooking with my Italian family. I'm the oldest of six kids. Mom was sick, so I had to do a lot of um, work about kitchen and laundry and all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
So my Sundays is my stress day. Get rid of stress day. I cook.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and I cook, I start my sauce in the morning. I make my own Italian sausages. I make my own
Nice.
pasta. There's so many things I do. And I've even started writing a cookbook. I just haven't had time to finish it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be your first purchase because every month, my husband gets me a new cookbook from a different region of the world because it's difficult for me to look online at recipes. So we have a whole library of cookbooks, and
Ah.
it's win-win. I cook for him, he gets to eat all of my so that's how we travel because since my stroke and my vestibular disorder, I can't really travel because the motion bothers me. So we travel culinarily.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. I love that.
So let's see. Okay, so this is the heavy stuff. When I had my stroke, I became very obsessed with life just got a whole lot shorter for me. Like, you know, how when you're a kid, you're like, oh, the world revolves around me and I'm going to live forever. Well, it's not like I felt that way when I was, in my 40s, but I still felt like I'm going to live until I'm 100. And then I had this stroke, and I really have had a difficult time letting go of my changed perception about life. And what I wanted to ask you about, I know it's a big question, but did you have a change in perspective about life after your stroke? And how did you navigate that emotionally? It sounds like yours turned into anger. Mine turned into, it's still here, actually. It's depression. It's depression, really. It's
Yeah.
fear.
Yeah. Well, I was fortunate in 2001. I went through three medical events in 1 year where I saw the light in the tunnel. I spent nine times in the emergency room that year. I had two catheter ablations. So
Wow.
that changed my life there to look for the good in every day. Unfortunately, I became complacent after many years. So the stroke reignited that feeling. But what was mixed in with that feeling of living every day to it's as much as I can was also the fear that you're talking about. How much time do I have?
Yeah,
And I still go through that.
you do.
Um, I
Okay.
still do. I mean, not as often as I used to, but now I define it as urgency instead. I think part of what happened to me is that I became a little more obsessed with my legacy. Because I have four children and 11 natural grandchildren and three step grandchildren. So, and now I'm a great grandfather. So, I mean, that has made a huge difference in my mental aspect, but it's also made a huge difference in the importance of the urgency of my legacy. So, I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of a weird thing to describe. It's hard to describe, but there is a fear there. I mean, there's times I'll lay down at night and, oh God, am I going to wake up in the morning?
Yeah.
And the stroke did that to me. I don't know how else to describe it. It's just that fear and urgency. It still comes occasionally, but I've learned to take the steps. For example, I use CPAP. the medications I use a lot of natural medications.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm taking the right steps not to be worried about it as much anymore,
Hmm.
but it's still there. It still comes.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's my biggest struggle right now is this I started going back to my psychiatrist again because I thought I had dealt with it and I thought I was through it, but it came back again. And it's like you said, that's the best way of saying it. It's urgency and legacy. That's exactly what I'm obsessed with too. Um, I was just talking to my psychiatrist about how I try to do so much all the time because I'm like, I got to get it done before, you know? I mean,
Exactly.
I
I'm in
just,
the same position. Like I said, I've got a full time job
yeah,
running a storage facility. I run a U-Haul dealership. I volunteer with Stroke Awareness Oregon, and I'm on the board of directors. And I
wow.
run Stroke Aware Radio. So
Yeah.
I mean, always trying to do so much
Yeah.
to get it done. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that brings an emotional challenge to me too, because it screws up my organization. It screws up what I get done, when I get done. And, I'm still talking to occupational therapists about, my organizational abilities. Yeah, I still struggle with, I'm doing so much that I'm not getting enough done, but I get so much done because of my,
I
it's
know I
like,
get so much
I
done.
sit down at the end of the day and I look at my list that I made the night before, and it's like, oh my God, I got 15 things done,
Yeah.
but I don't ever feel like I've gotten enough done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's me. We're twinsies, Ralph. We're
Uh,
twinsies.
I know after talking to you the first time, I'm thinking, oh
We
my
may
God.
look different and sound different, but we're twinsies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh there is that underlying tendency to be obsessive about things. I feel like folks with addiction just have that underneath that tendency to be to obsess about things.
Yeah.
I don't just do something, I obsess about something. If I'm gonna decide I'm gonna start quilting, then I'm gonna make a quilt for everybody I know. So uh, let's see. Let's see. As far as like isolation goes, um, I have a tendency when I start feeling this way, what we're talking about, I start isolating and not telling anybody about it. And I know that when I start isolating, that is a slippery slope for me. Do you struggle with isolation?
um, yeah, now that you mention it, I there's days where I'll just, you know, throw on my pajamas and robe, and there's nothing I want to do. I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to talk to anybody. You know, those still happen. So yeah, I isolate myself from others when I don't think things are going right, or I have, I don't know. I'm not sure how to describe the rest of it. But yeah, I do suffer with that a little bit.
Okay.
Um, but the best thing I found to get out of it is to kick myself in the ass and go out and look at my to-do list and get it done.
Do it
You know,
anyway, right? Stand
yeah,
up
do it
anyway.
anyway. It's
Yeah.
it's what I learned in my stroke recovery is if at some point you have to start doing what you used to do, even though you can't,
Yeah.
because once you start doing it, it's like my physical therapist in 3 years in said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I was a contractor, and I don't think I can ever climb a ladder again." She brought a ladder into physical therapy. So there's
Okay.
doing those things that you used to do that it may look ugly, but it gets better and better every time you do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've landscaping at the storage facility, stuff like that.
Mhm.
I did 8 hours when I first started at this facility, and I was down for the whole weekend. Now I have limits on myself, and those limits have gone from 2 hours a year, 2 years ago, to now I can do three or four at a time. You
Okay.
know, so, so you learn about those limitations and how to
Yeah.
get through
Yeah, I think like you mentioned earlier, patience is a big deal in stroke recovery. And I just get to the point where I mean, I have this daily chronic headache, and some days I just wake up and I feel like cussing the world out because I'm just like, this isn't, I can't do it anymore. I
them.
can't do it. I give up. But
Yeah,
what's the alternative? There is no alternative. What do I
no,
go buy a box of wine and start drinking my life away? Like, I'm not going to do that. I deserve more than that. So I just get up anyway. And I find that when you put one foot in front of the other one follows. Like you just keep walking through it. And some days are easier and than others. Um, so
like
you're, uh-huh.
somebody told me a while ago, your self worth is not what you do, how you do it, stuff like that. Your self worth is that you exist, and I've kind of lived like that. Um,
Hmm.
I'm existing, so I have a good self worth. Now,
Yeah.
where it goes from there is up to me. So,
Yeah. So this walking away, giving up your contracting business, that was your career before your stroke, right?
yes.
And then so what advice would you give for somebody who maybe just had a stroke? And I remember being in this position where I was just finishing up short-term disability. I had the choice to make. Do I go on long-term disability or do I go back to work? And I'm like, well, I don't envision myself being disabled, so I'm going back to work. And I figured, well, I'm just going to get better. Like injuries, they happen and you get better. And so I went back to work for 2 years and I just did not get better. In fact, I got worse. I got a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah.
And I had to make that decision that I need to walk away from my career. And I just was devastated, like we've talked about. Do you have advice for somebody who's standing right at that crossroad? Like, how do you manage that? What are some self-talk that might help somebody walk through that?
Well, I don't know if it's advice, but I can tell you for what I did is more of a inventory of my skills, abilities, motivations. I think that's part of my journaling is that I recognized after I got rid of the construction business, it's like, well, what else can I do? What else am I good at?
Hmm.
It's I took an inventory of those kind of things that I could do. For example, computer skills. I lost a lot of it. To this day, I couldn't tell you anything about coding, but I relearned all my software skills, so I can do just about anything with a computer now.
Okay.
Um, there's other things that the cooking, um, the going out and volunteering with Stroke Awareness Oregon. I run a pretty successful bingo with them that we do once or twice a year through another organization. So we raise um, I was a salesperson before the contracting business, so I know how to do that. So now I do that. I mean, especially like the storage. I expanded the different things with the storage facility. I expanded into U-Haul. So there's something, a skill that I knew I had of selling. So now I do that. I
Okay.
had a skill of raising money, so I do that. You know, I found my inventory of skills that I had,
Okay.
and I went after those instead.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
because I wasn't going to be doing any more roofs, you know, putting on any more roofs anymore.
Yeah.
So
For
I had to
sure.
find something that worked for me. So I
Yeah.
did. You know, I looked at myself, and I found the things that I could do, and went after it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's my athletic background, but I work like hell. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, I go after things.
Hmm. Yeah, I think about that. I think about there are folks out there who have had a stroke or any life altering event who don't have that get up and go at it attitude, or that's just not ingrained in them. And there's a lot of suffering out there. So I'm hoping that when people like you can talk about what that feels like, that it might inspire to be somebody like, I don't have to be strong to do it. I just do it. I don't
Yeah,
have to like courage is not doing something and not being scared. Courage is doing it even though you're scared. And that is freaking, that's what I do now. When I learned that, um, my introduction to that was my fear of public speaking. I was terrified of public speaking, and I took a class in college. I practiced, and I was always terrified to the point where my face was shaking and it was embarrassing, and my knees were knocking
oh my
and
gosh.
everything. It was terrible. And then I read this book called Talk Like Ted, and it like just just made me understand that standing in front of somebody and talking and looking like I'm, you know, good at it doesn't mean that I don't feel scared on the inside. And it was
Yeah.
from that point on that I was good at it, or I felt better on the inside about it, just getting up and doing it.
Well, part of it's that I hate to say trite sayings, but fight or flight. I
Yeah.
mean, you can run away from yourself anytime you want, but we're not put on this earth um, to not fight. You know,
Yeah.
somebody told me a very long time ago, the purpose of life is not to be happy. The purpose of life is to have mattered. And I take that personally as well. I have to matter in my own life as well.
Yeah.
And by helping others, it matters to me. By doing the things that I know I can do that I couldn't before and improve on it, I do it, you know. So, I mean, it's, it's hard to get that motivation, but you got to, I had to fight like hell to get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Like you, so you said you did an inventory of what you can do, and similarly, when I had to leave my job and was facing this like, how do I find purpose again? I did the same thing, only mine was a little uglier, I think. I sat on the front porch of my house just sobbing, like ugly crying. And I was like, I've lost everything is what I was thinking. And I'm like, what do I have left? And I realized I have my voice. I think I told you that. I realized I have my voice, and I'm like, that's it. I'm going to start a podcast. Because at that time, I couldn't even look at computers. So I thought, well, I just talk to my phone. That's what I'll do. And yeah, it was, I guess, my need to keep fighting. Like, I'm
Yeah,
not going to sit here and be ruled out. Like, I'm going to keep fighting. And that was how I got to this point.
yeah.
Oddly enough, it wasn't where I was aiming to go, but yet here I am.
Well, sitting on that front porch, I've been there. I mean, I didn't
Yeah.
get to the inventory easy.
Yeah.
There was those moments where I thought, "What the hell am I doing here? You know, why
Yeah.
am I doing it? Why am I doing this? Why, I mean, there's a point, and it still is, still happens. There's a point in every day you have to make a decision, and the decision I have to make for myself is, am I going to waste today? Am I going to waste the next hour, which I do purposely sometimes, or if am I going to, what am I going to do accomplish today?
Yeah.
Stroke warrior is achieving victories every day. The
Yeah.
little victories add up to the big victories. And those are decisions I have to make constantly.
Yeah. Every day.
Yep.
Um, okay, I have the final question for you today. We're doing pretty good, huh, Ralph?
I think so. I think so.
Can you
We're,
give me
we're
a
good
10
at
out of
this.
10 as an interviewer?
Yeah, we're good at this.
Okay. All right. The last question I have for you is if you could go back and talk to Ralph version 1.0 and let him know in a little while you're going to be recovering from addiction, from stroke, and all of these challenges that are going to make you want to give up. What advice would you give to Ralph version 1.0 in preparation for what was to come?
Ask. Well, first is fight. Um, I had to, and the way you do that is not yelling, screaming, punching, anything like that. The fight I'm talking about is you ask a lot of questions. The only dumb question is the one you don't ask. So I asked a lot of questions, or I should have asked a lot more questions. Um, you have to recognize that, I guess it's an acceptance of you have no control over, and this is part of the 12 steps too. You have no control over what's happening. What you have control over is how you deal with it. So I think that I would have loved to tell myself that,
Yeah.
because the first year was really hard with the anger. I mean, I didn't think anybody was worth doing what they were doing with me was working. I didn't think anybody knew what they were doing, and I didn't know what to ask. I had all this stuff going around in my head, like, well, how do I do this? How do I climb a ladder again? How do I cook again? How do I find those tools that I can do what I want to do? Like the cooking. They gave me a bar stool with a back so I can cook. Sit there at the counter and
Yeah.
cook. I wish I would have known to ask the silly questions about how to do things, what works and what doesn't, and also that find other people that are going through what you go through. I didn't get that for
Yeah.
a number of
Community.
years.
Yeah.
And even though our strokes are all different, they're similar in so many ways,
Yeah.
especially the emotional. I wish I would have told myself that back then.
Okay.
So I guess that
Great.
answers it, I hope.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer.
Thanks.
Uh,
I get lucky once in a while.
well, I appreciate you being with me, Ralph, and I hope this is the continues to be a long-term relationship between us. I do have something fascinating to tell you, and
Great.
that is that the picture behind you of the red tree,
Yeah.
I have that exact same picture in my living room. I believe it has a red bench underneath it, if I'm not
Yes, it does.
mistaken.
Yes, it does.
I'm telling
I
you.
am so in the tree of life, and I up there. I don't know if you can see it.
Same.
I hung a. Where is it? I don't can't see it, but I have this big circular tree of life with an aluminum tree in the middle of it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
I'll
I
send you a
that's
picture.
that's why I bought that tree also, and red is my favorite color. So the only difference is that mine isn't 5 panels, mine is the
One
picture.
picture, yeah.
Yeah, all together. But
Yeah, I like the 5 panel one because it signified to me different stages of my life.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
Have you
it's
noticed that the picture is symmetrical?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely,
I've stared at that
absolutely.
picture for a couple years now because I can't watch the TV. So while my husband watches the TV, I stare at that picture.
Oh
So I
my
noticed
gosh.
it behind you. I was like, that's my picture.
Yep, yep. With red bench and everything.
Oh, that's so
You know,
funny.
it's tree of life is really important to me for some reason, but it's stages of my life, and right under it are pictures of all my family. So that's part of my tree of life.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have any tattoos, but coincidentally, the only thing that I ever considered getting a tattoo of is the tree of life.
Me too. I want to get it on my back and put all my kids and family in it
What is
on branches.
happening? I'm telling you, we are like
I know, right?
soulmates or something.
We have to meet sometime.
I know. All right, Ralph. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rachel. This has been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Ralph. I'm so happy we got to connect, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye
All
bye.
right. Bye.